Clionadh is coming out with a new all iridescent eyeshadow palette. And I am so excited about this one because I think this is the first time that the brand has done any kind of all iridescent shimmer palette like this before. So to me, this release makes so much sense. We don't have all of the details just yet, but I do know that it's launching this month. And this collection also includes a bunch of nail polishes as well. But today we're going to focus on this eyeshadow palette. Just like in a few of the recent palette releases from Clionadh, these are smaller pans, which means that you get a greater variety at a lower price point. I believe that these pans are the same size as the Light Scatters palette, done in collaboration with Bad to the Brow. The exception to that would be the rectangular pan that's at the top. I'm pretty sure you'll be able to use a discount affiliate code on these, so I'm going to go ahead and pop mine up on the screen now. I am including eye swatches in this video as well. First we have the shade Head in the Clouds. It's one of two shades in the palette that has a sheer white base with a green and pinkish red shift. And for all of the swatches I'm going to show you, I'm going to do a couple of different lightings just so you can get different ideas of what the shades look like. I would say that for all these shades, I would recommend using some type of glitter primer. I've really come to love Clionadh's Shimmer Stay, which was done in collaboration with Bad to the Brow. Going in and applying it to a bare lid and a bare face, since I want to show you eye swatches of all of these shades. You get a glimpse of that green to pinkish red shift. Next we have the shade Cloud 9, which is a really beautiful bright green iridescent, and it has a subtle golden shift. I absolutely love how bright and glowy this green iridescent is. I think especially if you enjoy wearing iridescent shadows as highlighters, this one is really gonna pop. It just has a certain glow to it on the skin. And applying it to a bare lid, I also really like to see that in the arrangement of the shades, you get a full rainbow spectrum. Here's Cloud 9 a little closer up. The next shade we have is called Joys of Spring, and this is a really intensely shifting multi-chrome. It has a bright pinky orange base, and it shifts to red, to green, to yellow. You definitely get almost like a full rainbow shift. Definitely a really bright, vibrant, summery, fiery type of iridescent shadow. I feel like in person, these shades look even more spectacular, so the trick is just trying to show you how special they really are. Here is what Joy of Spring looks like closer up. At a harsh angle, you can see some of that intense shift. Next, we have the shade Happy as a Clam, and this is a somewhat similar shifting shade to Joy of Spring, but you have a much more neon orange base than pinky orange base. But similar to Joy of Spring, you have a very fiery shift. I think these two shades complement each other particularly well. And I feel like in the eye swatch of this shade, you get an even more intense shift than Joys of Spring. Here's what Happy as a Clam looks like closer up. Next shade we have is Jump for Joy. I would describe this shade as being a really glowy, kind of warm-toned yellowy green. In the shift, you get a hint of orange as well. Another really cool shade, and I love to see that there aren't any redundancies between the different shades. One thing I particularly love about doing eye swatches is really getting a feel for each and every shade. This is definitely one of my favorite shades that I've tried on so far. I love that green to yellow shift with just a hint of orange. Here is what the shade Jump for Joy looks like close up. Next, we have the shade Happy Go Lucky. I would describe this as having an aqua base with an intense blue shift. It's definitely a classic, and for good reason. In this lighting, you can see that intense blue-purple shift a little bit better. For my fellow multichrome nerds, this type of shade reminds me of classic shades like Terra Moon Space Baby. Not exactly the same, but definitely a similar vibe. And here's what Happy Go Lucky looks like closer up as well. Next shade we have is Walking on Air. I think this is going to be a crowd favorite. I would describe it as having a pale blue-purple base, kind of like a shade like Tessara, and it has a green, orange, and yellow shift. I actually do think this is like an iridescent version of the shade Tessara, but with Tessara, you don't have as much of that fiery shift that you get in this shade. You have to be at a pretty harsh angle to see it, and here I am applying it to the lid. You can see that it's a pale glowy blue purple, Here it is fully applied, and then here is a look at it closer up as well. This shade also reminds me a little bit of one of my favorite shades, Enamel from Clionadh. Next we have the shade Feeling Sky High, and I would describe this as having an electric purpley pink base. And at a harsh angle, it has predominantly a yellow and green shift. And you do get a little bit of a hint of orange in there as well. I really enjoy purple to green shifting shades. I also really enjoy that with these iridescent shadows, you get more than just white-based iridescence. And there's nothing wrong with those type of shades. I really do enjoy those as well, but having some iridescence with some base color can be really helpful on medium to deeper skin tones, just because you don't have that white cast. Here, closer up on the eye, you can see that green flip a little bit better. Now we're down to the last two shades. They're the ones that come in this little rectangular split pan. And it's really cute because half the pan has this little sun embossing and the other one has a little moon embossing. The little sun embossing is called Simply Beaming. This texture is super intense. Like, you can see even on the first swipe how much intensity you get. And you get yellow and orange and green shift. The texture of this shade reminds me a little bit of the iridescent Luxe, which is one of my own personal favorites because it's such an intense iridescent shadow. Before I applied this shade, I had a feeling it was going to be one of my favorites, and after applying it, I still feel the same way. This is going to be such a crazy, beautiful inner corner highlight. Here is what Simply Beaming looks like closer up. And the last shade is called Over the Moon. It's the other part of this split pan. This is a really beautiful icy tone shade. I would describe it as having silver and purple and blue multicolored sparkles throughout. It's also on the smoother side texture-wise compared to the other shades that I've swatched so far. I do think it's really nice that we get a nice split of warm and cool tones and a full rainbow spectrum in this palette, as well as a good variety when it comes to textures. Here is what Over the Moon looks like fully applied. I think this may be one of my own top favorite iridescents from the palette. I like the texture and I like the cool tones. And this is what the whole palette looks like swatched on the back of my hand. This shot is mostly so you can appreciate just how sparkly these shades are. And here's another shot so you can appreciate the shifts of those shades a bit better. Before I close out with some wrap-up thoughts, I wanted to come back and do an editorial makeup look using several of the shades in the palette. I just love playing with iridescent shadows. They continue to inspire me on a daily basis. I'm starting off with one of my favorite things to do, which is to take one of these Urban Decay eyeliners. This is the shade Smoke, and I'm just creating a little bit of a halo. I have some playtime before this eyeliner sets down. So I just lay down a bunch of product on either side of the eye, and I take a brush and blend it out. Typically, I'd probably like a brush that was a bit smaller, but this was the only one that I had at hand. I took Shimmer State and I placed it on the center of the lid and the brow bone. I'm taking the shade Cloud 9 and I'm just putting it with my fingertip on the inner portion of the center lid. I didn't really have too much of a plan on how I wanted to place these shimmers. Next, I'm going in with the shade Feeling Sky High and placing it directly next to the first shimmer I placed down and just overlapping them slightly. Lastly, I took Over the Moon and just placed it into the brow bone. I used the Urban Decay eyeliner on the lower lash line as well and just smoked it out a little bit. I didn't place any shimmers on the lower lash line. And here's my look closer up. I really love to play with iridescence and layer them in this type of way. It makes the easiest eye look, but it looks like you put so much more into it than you really did. It's the easiest, most seamless way of doing an oil slick eye. Now that we've had a chance to do some detailed hand and eye swatches and an eye look, let's close out with some final thoughts. First of all, I think it's due time that we have an iridescent palette like this from Clionadh. I love that this is a curated palette, that you get a great variety, that the pans are small so that it can be more affordable. All of those are going to make this a great way to try iridescent shadows from Clionadh, which are a really nice formula. Now, are these shades unique when it comes to the Clionadh line? I would say yes. What I love to see in this particular selection is the number of iridescent shades that we have that do have base pigment. So what I mean by that is that most shades don't have a sheer white base, but rather a sheer pigmented base. I think this type of formula will work on a really wide range of skin tones. And if you're looking for really bright and intense face highlighters, you may be able to use these formulas for that as well. I mentioned it earlier and I'll say it again. I do think that you're going to need a glitter primer with this formula. My own personal favorite is Clionadh's Shimmer Stay. I'm definitely keen to play around with this palette more. My plan is actually to come back with a roundup of some of my iridescent palettes. I'd love to hear in the comments what you think about this release. I really hope you found this video helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. And just a reminder, the palette is going to be available August 13th. If you made it to the end of the video, let me know in the comments what your favorite shade from the palette was.